So this one, look at this one. This one tiny little, how much is in this 4-ounce container? How many servings are in this container?
Three.
Three servings in this tiny little container.
Wow.
Oh no. Well, that doesn't make any sense because then it says serving size 1 4-ounce cup, which is what I'm holding. So that's just confusing.
That's just plain old wrong information. That's
3 servings
conflicting information.
Because this is a 6-pack, so it's not that there's 3 containers.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're calling it 3 servings and 1 serving at the same time.
Yeah, so just like you can't tell. You don't know what you're buying.
Welcome to Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black, where we discuss plant-based nutrition for the whole family. Thanks for listening. I'd like to give a welcome back to all my regular listeners. You have no idea how much your support means to me. I am truly grateful for each and every one of you. Thanks for showing up to listen every time I release a new episode. It means the world to me. Now, if this is your first time listening to Eat Your Greens, if you only just recently discovered the podcast, welcome to the family. If you're confused about all the conflicting messages out there about nutrition, if you want to learn more about how to optimize your own health, your kid's diet, or maybe just help a friend, if you genuinely want to do the right thing for yourself and your family, and I know you do, but you don't know where to begin, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Dr. Angela Black. I'm a board-certified pediatrician, and I am passionate about using evidence-based guidelines to inform and empower you, and that's exactly what's going to happen today. Do you ever feel overwhelmed in the grocery store? When you go to the store, you are confronted with aisle upon aisle of products designed to be enticing, to make you pick them up and buy them without a second thought. But we all know that that's a trap. I'm joined today by my unofficial co-host, Mae Parrish, and we spent several hours, I'm talking like 3 hours, in the grocery store looking at food labels so that you don't have to. You can go to the store, pick up a package, and know exactly where to look to find the most accurate information to help you make the healthiest choice. That's what this episode is all about. It was a fun trip, and we learned a lot of lessons. I hope you find this episode just as fun as we did. Are you ready? Welcome to episode 16 of the Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black podcast. Picture this. You and your toddler, if you don't have a toddler, just play along. You and your toddler head out to do some grocery shopping. You walk into the store with the best intentions of buying healthy food that your family will enjoy. The store is noisy and crowded. The toddler is bored and whining. You've got to get the shopping done in time to pick your other kid up from school. You're confronted with aisle upon aisle, loaded with an astonishing number of similar items to choose from. How do you decide? It can be downright overwhelming, and I'm willing to bet that in situations like this, most parents just grab the product with the most enticing label and hope for the best. In fact, food manufacturers are counting on it. The items that tend to bring in the most revenue for the store get the upfront, eye-level spots on the shelf. So it's in the manufacturer's best interest to design their packaging to be eye-catching and appealing. They want customers to notice their product and to be convinced that they should choose it over the competitor's products within just a few seconds at most. If you can relate to what I'm talking about, then this episode of Eat Your Greens is for you. Today, my friend Mae and I are visiting our local grocery store to investigate food packaging and labels. You might want to grab a couple of items out of your pantry or fridge to look at while you listen to this episode. Now, of course, if you listen while driving, please don't try to read the labels on any of your car snacks. Let's all be safe out there. Mae and I spent a few hours roaming the aisles, examining the packaging and nutrition information of a range of commonly purchased items. We looked at all kinds of things from baby yogurt to breakfast cereal, a variety of snacks, and an assortment of frozen food. We looked at some junk food, but we also picked items that claimed to be healthy. Now, a little disclaimer here. Neither one of us were interested in recording this episode at 4 a.m. We did try to go early-ish in the morning, but you're going to notice some background noise, and the sound quality from my little wireless lapel microphones is not as good as when I'm using the fancier equipment in a nice, quiet environment. Hopefully, the editing software will improve the overall sound quality and remove some of the background noises, but hey, at least there's no whining toddler. Just consider this an immersive grocery store experience and roll with it. Before we jump in, let me take a minute to introduce you to Mae. You might recognize her voice from episode 6, the New Year's episode where I talked about fad diets. She's the friend who wanted to go on the grapefruit diet. Fortunately, she's come to her senses and she's working towards a healthier, whole food, plant-based diet. Mae's a good friend of mine. She's a local real estate agent, and she's on the board of the Hays County Food Bank. She's an aspiring wellness coach, and she's the grandmother of 2 sweet littles. She did not ask me for a promotion, but I'm just going to say that I first met her when I put my house on the market, and she did a great job. We've subsequently become really good friends. I'm going to put a link to her website in the show notes at eatgreenswithdrblack.com, just in case you happen to be in the need of a realtor in the area. She's agreed to be my unofficial co-host, and she'll be joining me on the podcast periodically in the future. Are you ready to take your supermarket skills to the next level? Let's go shopping.
Good morning, Mae. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning.
We're here at HEB where we are going to talk about food labels. We're going to look at various products around the store and talk about how to read a food label. Is the information on a package really representative of the nutrition? And how can you tell? I mean, this is a big question for people, right? They want to know, when I go to the grocery store, how do I know if what I'm buying is healthy? And how do I choose healthier options? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at food labels, break it down, and help you make better choices at the grocery store.
Cool.
All right. So we're starting with the worst of the worst in the snack aisle. And we're looking at potato chips, right?
Yes, we are.
So are potato chips healthy or not healthy? Like, is this a question that people have?
Well, yes, actually. People go over to the chips that say that they're healthy-ish, and they choose those. The thin potato chips, they might choose.
Right.
Or the ones that say they have less salt, they may choose.
Right. Or the baked ones. Ooh, what about these? Look at these veggie straws. That sounds healthy.
I used to think they were.
All right. Well, let's take a package of these Central Market organic gluten-free veggie straws and let's compare it to this package of HEB ridged original potato chips, shall we? All right. So let's start with the front of the package. Did you know that the front of the package is not regulated?
No, I didn't.
So the information on the front of the package is really for marketing, and they can make a lot of claims that make it sound healthier than it actually is. So you really have to turn the package around and look at the label. The label on the back is what's regulated. So on the Central Market veggie straws on the front of the package, we see that they are gluten-free. And what else is on here? Anything else? Puffed potato snack made with tomato and spinach. Well, that sounds healthy. It's made with tomato and spinach, right? Okay, so the HEB regular original potato chips do claim that they're made with select ingredients. What does that mean? Somebody selected these ingredients. And they say that they're gluten-free. But those are the only, they don't seem to make any other health claims on the front of the package. Okay, so let's turn these around and see what we see on the back. All right, so you'll notice the rectangular nutrition label, right, that we are all familiar with. That is regulated by the FDA. Even things like the font and the size and whether it's bolded are mandated. So they should always be consistent from product to product. What's the first thing you think you should look at?
The calories.
The calories?
Yeah. Well, the ingredients.
What about the serving size?
Oh, I never think of looking at that.
So I chose the standard package for each, but for our veggie straws, there are 6 servings in the bag, and they state that that's about 35 straws. Have you ever counted out your snack portion, your pieces?
Never.
So Now, on the other hand, the potato chips say the serving size is 1 ounce, which is about 12 chips.
Oh my goodness.
So
very easy
right
to eat
now,
12 chips.
yeah, exactly. That's not very much at all. Okay, so then maybe let's look at calories. So 35 of our veggie straws has 140 calories versus 150 calories just for 12 chips.
Wow.
So you could definitely eat more veggie straws for
Yeah.
about the same number of calories if you were counting calories, which I actually don't recommend. So when we're looking at the amount of calories, the other thing you have to be aware of is that it can be off by as much as 20%, right? So 140 calories, 20% of that is 28 calories. So it could be 140 minus 28 or 140 plus 28. So that's 168 calories per serving that it could be. So that's why it's so difficult to count calories and lose weight, because they're not going to err on the side of less.
No.
It's probably on the side of more. So
Yes.
we could assume this could have as many as 168 calories per serving. And if you're the type of person that wants to count calories for weight loss, 20% is a lot.
Yeah, it is.
We move down the list. The next thing on our label is the amount of macronutrients. Do you know what macronutrients are?
No. I mean,
So
I know
macro-
that those are the larger
The
nutrients,
big three,
the big
right?
ones.
Fat.
But the term is
And people in the
sounds
fitness
scientific.
world
Yeah.
know, because they count their macros, right?
Right.
So we're talking fat, carbohydrate, and protein.
Right. Okay.
So fat is on top,
The main three.
the big three, right? Instead of micronutrients, which are things like vitamins and minerals.
Okay.
So for our single serving of potato chips, we have 10 grams of fat versus 7 on the veggie straws. So a little bit less fat. And then the next thing you have to ask is like, what type of fat? And the only ones they have to list are the bad ones, the unhealthy types of fat, saturated and trans. Exactly. So we see that our veggie straws have 1 gram of saturated fat and no trans fat versus the 2.5 grams. So of your 12 potato chips, 2.5 grams is saturated fat versus, and then they both say no trans fat. So did you know by law now trans fat is no longer allowed in our food supply?
Right.
But here's the catch. There can be up to 0.5 gram per serving of any type of fat.
Yeah.
And it does not have to be listed on the label.
That is so wrong.
So if there was 0.5 gram of trans fat per serving, like there could be 3 grams of trans fat just in this package that they
Yes.
don't have to list.
Yes.
Right.
I used to eat these because I felt like they were less damaging,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd go through a lot of them.
Yeah, they're so easy to eat.
I'm just going to jump in here with a few comments. First off, it's not actually trans fats that have been banned, it's partially hydrogenated oils. When scientists first discovered the health hazards of saturated fats, which mostly come from animals and are solid at room temperature, they tried to find a way to make the healthier unsaturated fats, which are usually liquid at room temperature, solid at room temperature, in order to give the foods the same mouthfeel as something with, say, butter. Thus, partially hydrogenated oils like Crisco were born. Partially hydrogenated oils are one type of trans fat. The good thing about science is that it's constantly changing as we learn new things. It turns out partially hydrogenated oils are even worse for you than saturated fat, and they were banned by the U.S. FDA in 2018. However, when any type of oil is heated, it will form some trans fats, and so you're going to see some of that listed on the food label.
So I want to talk about the ingredient list, because that's the other thing that's regulated and can be misleading, the front of the package versus the back of the package. So if we go on our veggie straws here and we go back to the front, it said, remember, made with tomato and spinach, which sounds healthy. But when you look at the back, the ingredients are listed by amount, right? The first ingredients have the most, and then the last ingredients have the least. So the first 3 ingredients are going to be the ones you really want to pay attention to. That's going to be the bulk of what's in your food in that package. So read off the first 3 ingredients on these veggie straws.
Potato starch, potato flour, sunflower, and or safflower oil.
Okay, so that's the first 3. Was spinach or tomatoes in that?
No, they're much further down.
It wasn't even whole potatoes. It was just the starch, right?
Yeah.
Potato starch, potato flour, and then oil.
Yes.
And then we have, read the rest.
Buttermilk powder, salt, coconut oil, maltodextrin, natural flavors,
Don't know what that is.
dehydrated garlic, cane sugar, spinach, tomato. There it is.
There it is. So how many down was that? A
Well,
lot.
that's about
It
10
was like-
down.
Yeah, way down.
Yeah.
And then dextrose. That's another type of sugar. So we have cane sugar and dextrose.
Yeast extract, sour cream, cream cultures, lactic acid, beetroot, dehydrated onion, tomato powder, turmeric, citric acid, cream, cultured non-fat milk, black pepper, lactic acid, paprika, maltic acid, vinegar, non-fat milk, sodium, caseinate, and then spices at the very end. And it says it contains milk, which you would not expect to be in there.
Right from the front, like it's veggie straws. So there's actually a lot of dairy in this veggie straws. So let's look at the potato chip ingredients. I think, honestly, we don't expect regular potato chips to be healthy. And in some ways, this is more honest than that one because there are no real health claims other than maybe select ingredients. Maybe they were discriminating in their potatoes that they selected. I don't know. But if we go down and look at the ingredient list here, it's much shorter.
It is.
Potatoes, vegetable oil, which contains one or more of the following: cottonseed oil, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, and or sunflower oil, and salt. That's it.
It's a whole lot less. Yeah.
Right. So although I would never claim that potato chips are healthy, the one that's packaged to make it look healthier, when you actually look at the label, if I was going to just indulge in a snack, I would probably just go with the actual potato chips because they don't have a lot of that extra stuff. And so, yeah.
Well, that certainly made me feel better about eating potato chips.
Well, I don't know if you should feel good about eating potato chips, but at least you have a better, you're not going to be misled by the packaging into thinking these veggie straws are an actual healthy snack.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on.
I never paid attention to how many snacks there are in the snack aisle. This is a lot of stuff.
It's overwhelming, right?
It is totally. I mean, like Simply Pop with sea salt. Is that a better alternative than the...
Should we compare? So let's take a minute to look at the popcorn because people think popcorn, oh, that's a healthy snack.
They do. Right.
So let's compare. We have two different products here and they're both mini bags. So we're trying to compare things with similar serving sizes.
Okay.
This first one, we're looking at the front of the package, which we remember is not regulated. It's more marketing. So what stands out? We have two brands here. And what do you first see about these two brands?
One says organics, which leads you to believe that it's healthy. The other says healthy. And that would lead you to think it's healthy.
Right.
They're both mini bags. So that would lead you to think that they're small portions that are better for you. And then one of them says 94% fat-free natural butter flavor.
The organic one, interestingly, just says butter
flavor. Right.
Although it does have this USDA organic
on it.
Seal, whereas the one that says natural does not have USDA organic. So what does natural mean?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
I'll tell you something, though. With my limited education, I would choose the one that says USDA organic because I would believe that it's been regulated to the extent that somebody has already judged that it's the better choice for me.
Right. So that is an important point. The terms like organic and non-GMO are regulated and natural is not. So there's no legal definition of what natural is. It can mean whatever it's not unnatural, right? It's not
something other
supernatural.
Than corn. Right.
It's not supernatural. So what is it? We don't know. So, right. So that's a good point. Organic is regulated. And I'm going to do an episode in the future about organic and non-GMO, what it actually means. Does it really imply that it's healthier? And they're usually more expensive. So you want to know. Now, this one has 10 bags. They're 100 calorie mini bags. It's a 34 gram bag. Mm-hmm. And this one is a 38 gram bag. So they're similar. Mm-hmm. Similar. So that's good to know.
And
when
I
we're
know
comparing.
that they're similar in price. The organics HEB is $3.48. And the healthy pop minis is $3.88 a piece.
But it's
you
actually
get-
cheaper, right? Yeah.
it's cheap, and you get 10 bags.
Right. 10 bags for $3.88 versus only six
6
bags
bags
of the organic
for
one for
$3.48.
$3.48. So actually that's that point that organic almost always means more expensive. But is it actually healthier?
Right.
Tune in to a future episode to find out.
Right.
All right. So let's move to the label side, which we know is the regulated information, right?
I don't buy this. I buy this.
You buy
I buy
just the
popcorn. I buy
dry
this.
kernels and you pop it yourself.
I sure
You
do.
don't buy the microwave.
No.
Although
ever.
there's easy, I saw recently on social media somewhere, somebody put these just popcorn kernels in a paper bag. They added like a drizzle of something like olive oil and whatever healthy spices that they thought would taste nice.
Okay.
And then they put it in a paper bag, folded it over and put that in the microwave and it popped.
It did.
So that would
Okay.
be a much less expensive and healthier way to do it
Without
than
a
getting
doubt.
these microwave ones, right?
Without a doubt, yes.
But looking at these labels on the microwave popcorn containers.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so the organic one that's butter flavor has 170 calories per bag. And the Pop Mini 94% fat free has 110 calories
Just
per
less.
bag.
Yeah.
But look at this, how they changed it. The HEB Organics, the 2 columns you have per serving unpopped. And then the second column is also per bag.
Yeah.
Right. And it's 170 calories for
The
both.
same.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, look what they did on this quote unquote healthier one. They put it per 1 cup popped, but the serving is 5 cups popped. So it looks like if you weren't really paying attention, what does that say? How many calories?
It says 20 calories.
20 calories.
Which is really small.
Right. Because it's only a fifth of a serving.
So it would make me go for that.
It would make you think, oh, this is so much healthier. It's only 20 calories. But if you actually read the label, that's if you ate a fifth of this mini bag. Who's going to eat that? Who's going to eat a fifth of a mini bag?
Nobody. And it's set up so that when you look at it and you're in the quickness of shopping, you look at the smaller number, you grab the smaller number, and you feel like you've made the
I'm
better
only
choice.
having 20. If I eat this bag, I'm only having 20 calories. It's 110 calories
Exactly.
per bag. But that's misleading.
It's so misleading. But it's designed, and people have to stand here and actually do math.
Right. And they even say 0 grams of total fat and saturated fat because that's per 1/5. But remember, you only have to list it if it's more than half a gram. Because for the whole bag, you actually get 2 grams.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's misleading. So honestly, I think I would count these as about the same. Yeah. I mean, they're different in some ways, but overall.
So presentation is different. It's like they're competing with each other too. It's like, okay, we got to get people's attention fast. One box is red and green and the popcorn is real big.
Stands out.
And the other box is austere.
Yeah, it's white with some blue and green on it. So somebody going for, say, they think simplicity means healthier, but then when you look at the labels, it has 4 times as much fat and more calories per popped mini bag, right? So yeah, equivalent. Both of them have their pros and cons. I would have a hard time if I was going to go with microwave popcorn. I would have a hard time choosing between these two. Like, do I want organic but higher fat? Or do I want not organic, but less fat and lower calories?
It's a hard decision.
This one has dairy. And since I try to eat more vegan, I would probably go with the organic one because it doesn't have dairy.
You made a good point. When I look at labels, I look through them for what I don't want. But more than what I do want sometimes. And that's how I make the decision.
And and then I just rethought what I said though, because saturated fat causes heart disease and increases your cholesterol. It doesn't matter if it's an animal or a plant-based source. So even though this healthy Pop Mini is not vegan, it has dairy in it. It only has 0.5 grams of saturated fat per mini bag versus the plant-based one has 3.5 grams of saturated fat. So if I'm just thinking about my heart health, the not organic one is actually going to be the healthier choice, even though it's not vegan, right? So this is why they've done studies that show that vegans who eat processed food actually aren't any healthier than omnivores who eat dairy and, animal-based foods. Now, if you're talking about like animal welfare and the environment, definitely go with the vegan product.
Uh-huh.
It just depends on what your motivations are and what your health goals are, right? So yeah.
This one even has popcorn you can trust on it. I mean, the owners of the company, their pictures smiling at you, telling you it's popcorn you can trust. That'll sway people versus reading the label.
Oh, look, it's the official snack of happiness.
Oh boy, that was a nice.
There's a lot of
claims. That.
It's the official snack. So if I eat this, I'll be healthy and happy.
And happy. There you go.
Okay. You go. Well, that's interesting. That was fun.
Wow. And you know what I'm realizing too is how long it takes. I mean, when I go grocery shopping, I do look at labels. And it takes me a while.
Yeah.
And I don't like to go grocery shopping. That's probably part of the reason I don't like to.
Well, you know me, I won't even set foot in the grocery store. Usually I do it all online.
We all know that Pringles and this Pringle lookalikes are not healthy. Everybody in the world knows that.
Right.
But look at how they have to compete. I mean, they put all kinds of great colors on them. They're next to good old Pringles, which are very pricey. And, they're just fun to look at.
Right. And they always put the front of the package facing out.
Absolutely.
The manufacturers do not want
the label to show.
Right. They've put a lot of thought and money into the front of the package, into making it appealing, something that you're going to want to grab. And like, look at this one. This one is the Good Crisp Company, with good being in big, bold letters.
Big old letter.
Like, this is good. And it looks kind of wholesome.
Yeah.
This
show
package. It's sour cream and onion potato crisps. And then it's a combination pack. Classic original potato. So this is potato chips.
Yeah.
But the box, looks like a field with sun and a clear sky with a few floating clouds. It's like, and it's good. And the good is on the sun thing with like sun rays radiating out. Like, this is so wholesome. It's potato chip.
And it's $9.98.
Wow. It's $10.
Isn't that
for
incredible? And this is something I never noticed. You notice they give you coupons for the most junky food in here?
$1 off of 2 Cheetos, Doritos, Sun Chips canisters. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm looking at the product that I hate the most. When I have patients come in with abdominal pain, with no obvious cause, and they don't have appendicitis, right? I start asking them about the diet. The number one thing that I get from kids that they eat when they're coming to see me with chronic abdominal pain, Takis and hot Cheetos.
Wow.
They are so bad. There are very few things that I tell my patients never, ever eat, like ever. Usually I'm like, well, every once in a while, small portions, but yeah, Takis and hot Cheetos are on the list of things that I say never, ever eat. Wow. Here's a true story. Phone call from a parent. This was years ago. Got a phone call from a mom. I had seen her toddler. We're talking a 2-year-old, right? I had seen this 2-year-old a couple of times for stomach aches, and there was no obvious cause. The mom calls me. My toddler, my 2-year-old, is still complaining of stomach pain, doctor. Nothing that you've recommended is helping. All they'll eat is hot Cheetos. Actual phone call. I was like, this 2-year-old should not know what a hot Cheeto is. They should never eat a hot Cheeto. But you're calling me and saying, doctor, why haven't you fixed this problem? I don't think you really need to see a doctor to figure out why your kid's having abdominal pain. Yeah, true story.
Wow.
So now we're still in the snack aisle. We've been in the snack aisle for almost 45 minutes. And we're looking now at pre-popped popcorn.
The healthy kind.
The healthy kind, right? Skinny Pop.
What is this one called?
Well, it's got like something
Lesser Evil.
Lesser Evil. Wow. And it has a picture of what looks like the Buddha and Himalayan pink salt. Extra virgin coconut oil. That sounds healthy, but coconut oil is saturated fat. It doesn't matter if it's plant or animal. I've already said that. It's still bad for you. Okay. Yeah, we could do this entire episode on the snack aisle. We're going to have to move on.
And you know what? I think it bears saying how attractive this is. It's like a party. The whole aisle looks like a party.
So here's the challenge. What do you think on this entire aisle would be the healthiest? Like if you're going to pick one thing that you think would be reasonably healthy, what do you think it would be?
Because I consider myself an educated person in terms of health, I would choose the whole kernel popcorn in the bag and take it home and pop it myself using olive oil. That's what I would use. When I'm going for something that's a little that's already done, I go for Smart Food or Skinny Pop.
So I actually would look at, so we're looking now, we've moved down to the tortilla chip section. And
these are blue corn are considered a
blue corn. Although what I would like is they have ones with whole grain. Let's see if we can find where's the whole grain tortilla chips, because that's what I tend to buy thinking that they're healthier. Even maybe they don't even sell it anymore. I don't see it. Tostitos used to have a tortilla chip that had actual whole like flax seeds in it. And that's what I would buy.
Oh, really? Yeah, I kind of remember that.
Maybe I was the only one that ever bought them because I don't see them on the shelf.
Well, this is whole grain sun chips.
Okay, well, let's look at the one that says 100% whole grain, because I did want to talk about that. When we're looking at things with a lot of refined carbs, if we can choose a product with whole grains, so the difference between whole and not whole is that they have refined out all the fiber and many of the nutrients that go along with a whole grain, right?
Got it.
Now, remember the rule about ingredient lists. It's from most to least, and the top 3 are really the most important. Mm-hmm. So when you're choosing a product that has something like whole grain on the label, you want to make sure that the whole grain is listed in the top 3, the first 3 ingredients.
Right.
Because it can say it's made with whole grain, but if it's down at the bottom, you're getting almost none. All right, so let's flip this one over and see what it says. So looking at the ingredient list, the first one is whole corn, and then you have sunflower and or canola oil, and then the third one is whole wheat. So 2 of the top 3 ingredients on this list are whole grain products. And then you have brown rice flour, whole oat flour, sugar, and salt. So if I was going to try to pick it, like I agree, the healthy popcorn that you just pop yourself, probably the healthiest thing on this aisle, but I can't really scoop my guacamole with the popcorn, right? So if I'm looking for a chip, this might be what I would pick, because it had a pretty simple ingredient list without a lot of additives. Whole grains were in the top 3. Right? Mm-hmm. All right. Let's look at fiber, because that's the thing. The main thing you're getting from whole grains is fiber. So when you look at the carbohydrate section of the label, it has 3 things. It has total carbs, and then that's broken down into the amount of fiber and the total sugars. And then under the total sugars, you have how much added sugar, right? Because some things have natural sugar. Fruit, natural sugar. There's no added sugar. When you really want to pay attention to the added sugars, because that's the unhealthy sugars.
Right.
So this one has 19 total grams of carb per serving, of which 2 grams are fiber and 2 grams are total sugars. But all of the total sugars are added because the second to the last ingredient was sugar on the list. Mm-hmm. So a good rule, if you're looking to increase your fiber and you're looking at a label, a way to tell if it's actually a good source of fiber is to look at the ratio of the total carbs to the dietary fiber. And you want a less than 10-to-1 ratio. So what does that mean? Here we have 19 to 2, right? 19 total to 2 grams. So if we rounded 19 up to 20 and there's 2 grams of fiber, that's about 10-to-1, right?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
So maybe a little bit less than that. So it's not borderline high, good source of fiber, right? But it's close. I mean, we are on the junk food aisle here. We're on the snack aisle. So again, if I was going to choose a snack, this is probably the one I would choose as the healthiest thing on this aisle.
Okay. I would go along with that. Yeah.
After popcorn. So here we are. We've moved on to the yogurt section. All right. So what do you think? Yogurt, healthy, not healthy?
Definitely healthy.
Right? Everybody says that. I have patients coming in all the time like, oh, it's healthy. I give my kids yogurt all the time. Well, let's start with that. Let's start with the marketed for kids section. We have fun characters. We have cute, healthy babies on some of the packages.
Smiling.
Yeah, and look at all the like well-known characters. We have Disney characters on this one. We have Baby Yoda.
Oh my goodness.
So we have this Go-Gurt by Yoplait. One of them is regular. It has bright colors. It has crayons. New bright yogurt colors. That doesn't sound very healthy. But then in tiny print, no colors from artificial sources. But remember, artificial, natural, these are not regulated terms. So who knows what that means? And then the Simply Yoplait yogurt has a more wholesome looking package with pictures of strawberries. And it says no added color, no high fructose corn syrup.
Low fat yogurt with vitamin A, D, and calcium.
But the colorful regular one is fat-free versus low-fat, and it also has vitamins A, D, and calcium.
So if my baby was chubby, I would go with the fat-free one.
So here's a tip. When things are fat-free, they've taken out the fat, but the question is, what did they add? In some cases, the full fat may be healthier.
Really?
People don't realize that. All right, you want to flip it over to find the label side. Let's see, what do we have here? Okay, so a serving size. First of all, a serving size is 3 tubes. That's interesting. Not
3
one
tubes.
tube.
3.
And that's the opposite, right? Don't they usually try to make it the least?
Lesser.
So it's interesting that they didn't do that on this, that this serving size is actually larger than a single, because I would probably just give my kid 1 tube.
Yeah.
So the conventional brightly colored one is 150 calories per 3 tubes, and the Simply Go-Gurt is 140 calories per 3 tubes. And we have 2 grams of fat, with one of those being saturated on the Simply one that did say low fat, and then the fat-free says 0. So this is the conventional one, right?
Yeah.
Total carb is 30 grams. No fiber. 23 of those total carbs are sugar and 18 are added sugars.
Right.
Compared to the Simply one, which has 23 grams total carb, also no fiber. I mean, and I don't expect yogurt to be a fiber-rich food anyways.
Not at all.
16 of those total carbs are sugars, 10 of which are added sugars.
Now, as somebody who's not real educated on that sort of thing, I think that I would always go with the lesser percentage, always, of sugars.
Right.
I would think, okay, that's always the better choice. So I would go with the Go-Gurt
Simply one, because it had 8% of the 3 tubes is total carb, and versus 11. And we're talking about 30 versus 23 grams.
Right.
And still both of them high sugar.
High sugar.
All right, let's look at the ingredient list, because we talk about that's the next most important thing to look at.
Right.
So the Simply one.
Cultured grade A low fat milk, sugar, modified cornstarch.
All right, that's the first 3 ingredients, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want to focus on. On the conventional one,
what is that?
Cultured grade A non-fat milk versus cultured grade A low-fat milk, sugar and modified food starch. And this one had sugar and modified cornstarch.
Mm-hmm.
So food starch versus cornstarch. It's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know that I've heard of food starch.
Right. What type of food is it made?
Yeah.
So the first 2 ingredients are essentially the same, but the Simply one was made with low-fat milk, and the other one was made with fat-free milk.
Right.
They're almost the same.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a little fat in the Simply one and none of the coloring. Mm-hmm. That's really the only difference.
Mm-hmm.
The front of the package makes it look vastly more healthy.
Yes, it does.
And
Sweat,
okay, so that's for kids. What about this one for babies? Stonyfield Farm Organic Baby. So again, we have our outdoor theme on the front of the package with some fields and a red barn, like, oh, these are healthy cows that are roaming around outside in the pasture. Then we have this very happy looking baby with chubby cheeks, smiling. Number 1 pediatrician recommended. So let me tell you a little bit about how they come up with that, because I get this often. I will be sent email surveys. Please take this survey. We will pay you $50 to take this survey.
Okay.
And then they'll give me a list of things, whatever it is. It could be lotion. It could be these yogurts, whatever it is. And like, of these products, which one would you recommend?
Okay.
That's it. That's how they determine, number one, pediatrician recommended.
Oh my goodness.
Like, yeah, I may not recommend it at all, but of the choices given, this might be the one I would recommend if I took the survey for the $50 or however much they're going to pay me to take that survey.
Right. Oh my goodness.
So it's meaningless, basically. It's doctors who are wanting to make a few extra bucks will take these surveys and answer the questions, which are very leading. And so it doesn't mean that I'm like in my office saying, oh, you should definitely feed your baby this product.
Right.
I don't do that. Okay. Now, you know. All right. So this one, look at this one. This one tiny little, how much is in this 4-ounce container? How many servings are in this container? 3 servings in this tiny little container.
Wow.
Oh no. Well, that doesn't make any sense because then it says serving size 1 4-ounce cup, which is what I'm holding. So that's just confusing.
That's just plain old wrong information. That's
3 servings
conflicting information.
Because this is a 6-pack, so it's not that there's 3 containers.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're calling it 3 servings and 1 serving at the same time.
Yeah. So just like you can't tell. You don't know what you're buying. All right. So in this baby yogurt, we have 4 grams of fat, and we don't know if that's for a third of a container or a full container. We have no idea. 2.5 grams of which are saturated. Now, this is a dairy product. It's made from milk, so it's going to have saturated fat. 12 grams of carb, 9 of which are total sugars. 6 of those are added. And the ingredient list is cultured, pasteurized, organic whole milk. Organic cane sugar is the number 2 ingredient in this baby yogurt. And the number 3 ingredient is organic peach puree, because I picked up the peach flavor. And then after that, we have pectin, natural flavor, annatto extract for color. And this one does have some live cultures.
Okay.
But yeah, very misleading label.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go to the grown-up yogurts. So we have a variety. There's so many. Like, again, we could spend another 45 minutes. And we have some that look healthy, but then we have even like ones that are clearly candy. Yo Crunch M&Ms.
I never noticed that.
And then these Chobani Flip, mini chocolate chip,
Snickers in your
Snickers yogurt. How can we take something that could potentially be healthy and make it completely not healthy? Salted caramel crunch.
But get your kids to eat it.
Well, what about keto yogurt? This is like high protein, low carb. But again, when we're talking about, like, if they took out the carb, what did they add, right? They took out the sugar, what did they add? Now, it has some, looks like walnuts or pecans.
Oh, that's not granola?
Well, it looks like nuts to me.
Yeah.
Let's look at the label of this keto-friendly vanilla and granola yogurt. Okay, it was granola. So we have this one container in our hand, serving size 1 container. So at least that's straightforward. 240 calories, 17 grams of which are fat, 6 grams of those are saturated fat. And it has 25 milligrams of cholesterol, which is 8% of your daily value. Total carbs, 6 grams. Dietary fiber, 1 gram. Total sugars, 2 grams with 0 of them being added. Protein, 16 grams. And then the ingredients are too small for me to read.
They're absolutely too small to read. No, I can't read those at all. I have to
bring my
magnifying glass.
Ingredients. Daily blend, pasteurized, ultra filtered, non-fat milk, pasteurized milk fat. So that's the top 3 ingredients. Milk and milk fat. And then more fat, high oleic sunflower and or avocado oil, natural flavor, salt, sucralose, cultures. And so then it talks about some live cultures. Anyways, my eyes are really strained trying to read
I can't read this at all. I wouldn't read this. So that's why they put this in bold, 4 grams of net carbs, 2 grams of sugar, 16 grams of protein, and 17 grams of fat.
So do you know what a net carb is?
I would imagine it's after you take out the other carbs.
Right. If you subtract out the fiber, what you're left with is net carbs, because the idea is that fiber doesn't contribute to a rise in blood sugar because we don't actually digest and absorb fiber, right? And that's the whole topic of my microbiome and my fiber episodes, is that it's our bacteria that actually digest the fiber. We don't. So the health food industry and the low carb industry has essentially made up this thing that if you subtract out the fiber from your total carb, so the front of the package makes it sound like there's only 4 grams of carb per container, but there's actually 6 grams. It's just they subtracted out the 2 grams of fiber. Although that doesn't even it doesn't even add up. Total grams of carb on the back on the label, which is regulated, 6. Yes. One of them is fiber. So that would mean the net carbs would be 5, but the front of the package says 4.
2. It says 4. You're right. So the math is all off on these in many cases.
Right. So that we're going to say this a bunch during this episode. The front of the package is not regulated. They can make many claims.
Yep.
You really have to look at the label.
That's a lot of work.
And it's low carb, but it was kind of high fat.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
And people who follow a keto diet, low carb keto diet, actually die younger. The research is clear.
Really?
Yes. Unless you follow a plant-based low carb diet, which is much harder to do. But people who follow a traditional low carb diet have higher rates of death from heart disease and stroke and diabetes and things like that. Also, they were much more likely to develop severe COVID and die of COVID infections. And that goes back to the microbiome, because when you have a low carb diet, it's by default also low fiber. You're not feeding your gut bacteria. And so you're not getting all the benefits that go with a healthy, diverse population of bacteria.
That is amazing. So here's what I buy. I buy Chobani.
You buy the Chobani. So Greek yogurt, which has, I think, more protein than not Greek yogurt.
And I get the non-fat plain, no sugars added. I do add honey when I go home.
Mm-hmm. All right. Front of package, only natural ingredients. What do we know about the word natural?
Unregulated.
No idea what that means. Triple strained, delicately creamy recipe. What is delicately creamy? It's non-fat. So where does the creamy part come from? Full of endless possibilities.
Oh, I love it.
Smoother of the smoothest.
I love it.
Smoothies.
Smoother of the smoothest smoothies. Say that 3 times.
Dazzler of the dreamiest dips. Read the next one.
Fluffer of the fluffiest flapjacks.
Creamer of the creamiest creme brulee.
This is magic in the making.
Wow. Marketing at its finest. It's like poetry. AI, right? So much alliteration in one label. 16 grams of protein and 0 grams of added sugar. Doesn't mean it has no sugar or it's low carb. Just means it's not added. All right. Let's look at the back. What is a serving size?
About 5 servings per serving size, 3/4 of a cup.
Do you think you add, how much do you eat for your breakfast when you have it and add honey?
At least a cup.
So a little more.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes a cup and a half.
Right. So 90 calories for that 3/4 cup.
Mm-hmm.
0 fat listed. And then there's 6 grams of carb, no fiber, and 6 grams of sugar, none of which are added, and then 16 grams. So how do they get 16 grams of protein, no fat, and 6 grams of carb? Where's the ingredients?
The ingredients are cultured non-fat milk.
That's it.
They do have 6 live and active ingredients.
So that's the cultures, right? That's the bacteria. 6 live and active cultures, and that's the type of bacteria.
Right.
So it's a 1 ingredient list, cultured non-fat milk. All right. Well, actually, I think you're making a good choice because it's the plain yogurt, so it doesn't have all the flavor, which would add a lot of carb and other stuff.
Yeah.
And then you're adding your own
sweetener. This also serves really
plain as yogurt goes. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use it in cooking and all of that.
I use it instead of sour cream. It's delicious.
So, what we're learning here is how much time it takes.
Yes.
And if you really want to try to make healthier choices, you either have to dedicate several hours of walking around the grocery store, reading every label, doing math, or here's what I recommend to try to make it more efficient. Pick a category of food. I'm going to use breakfast cereal as the example. Pick one grocery trip and just look at the breakfast cereals. Look at what you usually buy and see if you can find a healthier option. The next trip, pick something like frozen foods,
Okay.
right? So you're not trying to do everything on your grocery list in one trip because you will be in the grocery store all day.
Forever.
So let's talk about some legally regulated definitions. When you look at a package and it makes claims like low fat, reduced fat, fat free, reduced calorie, or low calorie,
Yes.
those are regulated terms. They have to meet certain criteria. And that way they're not so misleading, right? Because it could say low fat, but what do they mean? Low fat compared to what? You always have to ask compared to what? So that's why the FDA stepped in and said, if you're going to make these claims, they have to meet certain things. For instance, low fat has to contain 3 grams of fat or less per serving. Reduced fat has to contain 50% or less of the fat found in the original product. And that's a lot.
That is
They can't just reduce it 2% and say this is reduced fat.
That's
It's
half
essentially the
fat.
same, right?
Yeah.
Fat free. This one is tricky. So they can round down and this is what I've said before. It can contain up to 0.5 gram of fat per serving and still be called fat free. And then reduced calorie means that there are at least 25% fewer calories than the original product. So it has to be comparing to a product of the same brand, right? The original versus what they've reduced. And then to say low calorie, there can only be a maximum of 40 calories per serving for it to be make a claim of low calorie.
Wow.
That's very small.
That is very
Even
small.
that popcorn we looked at was 100 calories per package.
Right.
Can't be called low calorie.
That's really
I would be hard pressed to find anything in this store that was actually low calorie,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So we're in the frozen food aisle because I think you're going to see a lot of claims made on frozen food products, especially
Packaged
ones,
frozen food.
right? Especially ones that are like marketed to be healthier,
Mm-hmm.
right? So looking at this like Stouffer's lasagna, it's probably not going to have any claims about being low fat or, in fact, yeah, like the front of the 2 times the meat made with real cheese. So this is going to appeal to the we're looking for something hearty.
Yep.
It's not making any health claims.
These are comfort foods.
They're making it, yeah, but they are trying to real beef and tender white meat chicken. So what's in there is high quality ingredients, but no claims about health.
Not at all. Well, there's a lot of honesty there.
That's true. That's true. And then we have this steak and mac.
What is that? Steak and macaroni?
Steak with macaroni and cheese. Excellent source of protein. Sure it is. But it doesn't talk about fat. There's so much fat. And let's just look at this label real quick. So the front of the package, Nighthawk steak and macaroni and cheese, charbroiled chopped beef with steak sauce. Then turning it around, we have,
Whoa.
I don't know who Mac is, but I like him.
That's what the label says.
That's what it says.
Meet more interesting characters. Join us on social media.
All right. So we do have 1 serving per container, which is 1 tray. It has 420 calories. And this is like a pretty small little package here. It's pretty skinny. 28 grams of fat, of which 10 are saturated, 70 milligrams of cholesterol, 17 grams of carb with no fiber whatsoever, 3 of which are sugar. So that's going to be all that refined flour in the macaroni.
I know that company
it's
because
from
they work
Buda.
with the food bank.
And they're based in Buda, Texas.
Yes.
This is a local
They work
product.
with the food bank. Yeah.
Okay.
They help food bank
Well,
manage
that's
their
good.
food.
I still wouldn't eat this, but at least they've got a good mission for their. Okay. So I want to look at the ones that are marketed for weight loss. Okay. Lean cuisine. So here we're in the weight loss or the quote unquote healthy, right? We've got healthy choice. And so let's talk about that and compare. Okay. Look, here's a lean cuisine Salisbury steak with mac and cheese. So that's going to be similar to that other product we just looked at. Okay. Front of package, which we know is not regulated. So the brand is Lean Cuisine Protein Kick, 23 grams of protein. Salisbury steak with mac and cheese, 250 calories versus the over 400 calories we saw in the other one. Also says excellent source of protein. The Nighthawk steak and mac was 7.15 ounces versus 9.5 ounces on the Lean Cuisine, which is interesting because the package is smaller.
It is.
So what that tells you is that this steak and mac, the box size is bigger, but what's actually inside it is smaller.
Yes.
And then turning around to the back, the Nighthawk had 420 calories for fewer grams of actual food. And this one has 250. Both of them have one serving per container. And then we have 28 grams of fat for the steak and mac versus 4.5 grams of fat for the lean cuisine. So they've taken a lot of the fat out, but it's still a half a gram of trans fat versus a whole gram. So they both have a fair amount of trans fat. Mm-hmm. But saturated fat is much less. The lean cuisine has 2.5 grams of saturated fat versus the whole 10 grams of saturated fat in the Nighthawk product. Ingredients. So water is the number one ingredient.
Yes.
So what they've done is they've added a lot of water content to the meat and the sauce so that it's low. What you're paying for is water, which I guess is healthier than saturated fat. But that's the number one ingredient on this lean cuisine.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And then number 2 is cooked beef and number 3 is cooked pasta. This one contains skim milk, which is another way of saying fat-free, the lean cuisine. Versus the other one had pasteurized milk. So we can assume that's full fat milk. Interestingly, of course it's Salisbury steak. So it is cooked pork, but then there's mushrooms, texturized, and then less than 2% of all this other stuff, including cheese and salt.
Salisbury steak is not
this
beef?
One's pork. Yeah, I guess
Where
so.
does it say that on it?
Cooked pork. There's no beef.
Sure does say that.
Or if there is beef, it's way down.
You get the idea that it's beef because
it's
looks
called
like
steak.
Yes.
So you think you're getting
steak,
beef, but you're getting pork. All right.
Wow.
Interesting. So you're definitely getting way fewer calories, way less saturated fat in the lean cuisine. And it's sort of a larger size, but I think when you cook it and all that water evaporates out, it's going to be a lot less.
Wow.
All right. Interesting. So, and the lean cuisine, although it's trying to make it, it looks healthy, nowhere did it say low fat. And that's because it has to have 3 grams of fat or less. And it had 4.5 grams of fat per serving.
There you go.
All right, let's look at Amy's Bowls Chili Mac. So we're kind of looking at a similar, like macaroni and cheese with the
biggest challenge of these is they have so much sodium in them, and it's not funny.
Well, let's find out. So the front of the package is not making any health claims. It does say gluten-free, and then it just says made with organic rice, pasta, tomatoes, and beans. So the back. Serving 1 bowl, 410 calories. So that's interesting. It's closer in calories to that steak.
The Salisbury steak.
No, not the Salisbury. That was, the beef steak. 410 calories, 18 grams of fat, of which 8 are saturated, but 0 trans, which could mean, up to a half a gram. 780 milligrams of sodium. That's more than the steak one.
So much.
Total carbs, 48 grams. This one at least does have some fiber. So that's from the beans. Mm-hmm. And 4 grams of sugar and 15 grams of protein. Okay. Ingredient list. That's the next thing we want to look at. Top 3, organic rice pasta.
And they give you the ingredients,
which they break down. And then organic low fat milk. And then we have red beans. And then there's cheddar cheese. So there's no meat in it though, because it's onions, and then tofu is the protein. But there is butter. So there's dairy, but no meat in this one. But, honestly, calorie for calorie, it is less fat, including saturated fat, but the number of calories is the same. And most of that's going to come from refined carbs in that rice pasta.
Okay.
Now, if you have celiac disease and you are really sensitive to gluten, you have to be very cautious because by law, a product can be labeled gluten-free, but still have as much as 20 parts per million of gluten, which is the equivalent of about 20 milligrams of gluten. And if you're somebody with celiac and really sensitive to gluten, 20 milligrams of gluten is enough to cause symptoms in many people with celiac. So even though it says gluten-free and it's made with rice flour, you have to be really cautious with these prepared meals.
A little aside about sodium and percent daily value. On the nutrition facts label, after cholesterol and before carbohydrates, you will find the amount of sodium per serving listed. Remember, table salt is sodium chloride. Why should you care about the amount of sodium in your food? I'm glad you asked. Although fat and carbs get all the attention in the media, it may actually be the amount of salt in your food that is most likely to kill you. This is because too much sodium raises your blood pressure, which puts extra stress on your heart and stiffens your blood vessels. Over time, the effects of too much sodium dramatically increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. Most Americans get an average of 3,400 milligrams of sodium every day. Compare that to the recommended intake of less than 2,300 milligrams per day in the dietary guidelines for Americans. So we're getting about 1.5 times the recommended amount. The American Heart Association actually takes it further and recommends only 1,500 milligrams per day or less. So going by the Heart Association's guidelines, we're getting over double the safe amount of sodium in our diet every single day. So pay attention to the amount of sodium listed on the label. To the right of each category on the label, you'll see the percent daily value. That's going to tell you the percentage of the recommended amount of each category you're getting per serving in that food. For sodium, it's based on the 2,300 milligrams per day. That Amy's Chili Mac bowl that Mae and I were looking at had 780 milligrams of sodium, which is 1/3 of the recommended amount per day, or half of the daily amount recommended by the American Heart Association. That's just in that one smallish frozen meal. If you're looking at things like fat, carbs, and protein, it gets a little tricky because those are based on the percentages recommended for someone eating 2,000 calories per day. That's the amount of calories per day that a 70 kilogram or 154 pound male would need. So if you happen to be a 70 kilogram male, great, you can just go by the info listed on the label. The rest of us are going to need to do some math. And who has time for that? By now, we've already given our irritable toddler our cell phone so they can watch Cocomelon videos, and we would have to take the phone back to use the calculator to figure out the percentage of saturated fat per serving we're actually getting. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So the bottom line here is that if you're trying to reduce your saturated fat or cholesterol intake, then look for products with a lower amount per serving. If you want to boost your fiber intake, go with the one with the highest fiber content. Remember the less than 10-to-1 rule for fiber to total carb, which I talk about a bit more when we get to the breakfast cereals. Pay attention to sodium, but don't worry too much about the other percent daily values unless you have a specific reason to do so.
Let's go to the breakfast cereal because I think that's an important one. Okay, so this is Grainberry multi-bran flakes, which is the cereal that I like to buy. It has this onyx sorghum. It's a type of whole grain, and it says whole wheat on the front, sun-activated antioxidants. I don't know what that means. Is it sun-activated when it's growing in the field, or is it after I eat it, the antioxidants are sun-activated? I have no idea. But it does say no added colors, flavors, preservatives, more free radical protection, and more natural plant fiber slows sugar absorption. So that's all on the front of this package. It does have a certified whole grain, which means it has 16 grams or more per serving of whole grain. And that looks like an official certification and not just a random claim. That's by the wholegrainscouncil.org. Okay, so what are we going to compare this to? What about the Special K? Special K original multigrain with a touch of cinnamon, right? And the front, this claims it's a good source of protein, whereas the Grainberry is all about the whole grains. So does it say on the front anywhere whole grain on this Special K? So multigrain, it's what it says, but it's not, that's not a regulated phrase. Multigrain does not imply that it's a healthy grain. It can still be completely refined.
Right.
And it does say sweetened wheat, rice, and soy flakes. That's what you're getting in your Special K.
Right.
But everybody thinks Special K is a pretty healthy cereal.
Everybody.
Right? Like,
yeah.
oh, it's Special
Yeah.
K. It's marketed as healthy. All right. Well, let's look at the nutrition facts label. All right. So first of all, the servings are similar but not the same. So we have
1
1 1/4 cup, which is 40 grams for the grain berry. And we have 1 1/3 cup, which is 59 grams. So that really makes it hard to compare, right? Because the serving sizes are different. And I think they do that on purpose, right? I wish they had a standardized serving so that you could really compare products without having to like break out your calculator. 1 1/4 cup, I can tell you that I probably eat a little bit more than that when I pour it in my bowl,
I know,
but not much. Like it might be 1 1/2.
I do 1 1/2.
So, and then the Special K is 1 1/3. So maybe that's what I would pour in a smallish, like I'm not eating a huge, humongous bowl of cereal, right? For the grain berry, total fat is 1 gram, also 1 gram on the Special K. And then carbohydrate on grain berry is 33 grams and 44 grams on the Special K. And then 6 grams of fiber versus 5 grams. So it's a bigger serving size for Special K, but less fiber. Now, if you want to do math while you're looking at these labels, a good thing to look at, I think we already talked about this, was that ratio of carb to fiber, right? You want a ratio of less than 10 to 1.
Right.
So that means the number of grams of fiber should go into the grams of total carb less than 10 times. So you have 6 grams of fiber per 33 grams of carb. And I would have to get out the calculator, but that's like half. That's right, 5, because 60 would be 10 to 1, 60 total carb to 6 grams of fiber. So we have on this one 44 to 5. So yeah, the grain berry does have a better ratio. It's much less than 10 to 1 versus this is what, like 9 to 1 or something on the Special K. So you're definitely getting more fiber, which is the claim that this grain berry product makes. So let's move down to the ingredient list. We have whole wheat for the Special K. Whole wheat is the first one. So when you're looking at these, so I'm surprised it didn't say whole grain on the front of the package because they could definitely make that. It's in the top 3 ingredients. And then the grain berry, whole grain wheat. So same thing. Number 2 ingredient is rice for Special K and sugar for the grain berry, which is really what surprised me that sugar was number 2 on this one. And then the number 3 on the grain berry is this unique sorghum blend, which is some sort of like it's a whole grain. And then for the Special K, the number 3 is just wheat bran. So
actually the 3rd is sugar.
Oh, the 3rd was sugar. I missed it. Okay, you're right. Whole wheat, rice, sugar, then soy protein, then wheat bran.
So as much as you thought the grain berry was the better one.
Well, I still think it is because it has more fiber. And it has, of the, how many ingredients? 5 of the 7 are actually grains. And then the Special K has, only 1. Well, no, 2, whole wheat and wheat bran. And the rest is rice, sugar, soy protein isolate, cinnamon, malt flavor, other natural flavors.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to stick by my grain berry, but if I hadn't looked at the label, I would not have known that sugar was the number 2 ingredient.
Let me look at what I eat, which is shredded wheat.
Shredded wheat. Okay.
And I usually eat this one.
HEB, bite-sized shredded wheat. Front of package, 60 grams of whole grains.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Excellent source of fiber per serving. Low in saturated fat and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease. Because fiber has been shown to do that. So whole grain shredded wheat cereal. That's the front of the package of this shredded wheat.
Right.
Well, let's look at the ingredient list. What does 100% of whole grain mean? It has the ingredients whole grain wheat, number 1, wheat bran, number 2, and then BHT added. So it's basically all, that's it.
Right.
There's no sugar.
No.
Oh, I might switch to this one. 1 1/3 cup serving with 210 calories, going back down to carb. So it's 8 of fiber to 49. So again, it's a little over 5 to 6. So definitely less than 10 to 1. That's a good ratio of fiber to carb. And then on this HEB brand, it's 25 biscuits. Well, how do I compare that to 1 1/3 cup?
Yeah, that's a tough.
I don't know how much. Ooh, I might have to switch. Now, the grain berry's main claim on the front was about antioxidants.
Right.
Versus these didn't make that claim, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to look at a kid's cereal. Let's go down to, okay. Now.
Wow. Aren't they all kids cereals?
Yeah. So many.
Do people actually serve their children
Oh, all the time.
This stuff here,
Yeah. Yeah.
that has sugar, and more sugar.
I know, but it's made with real peanut butter. That's got to be healthy, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. I forgot about that.
Gosh, so many, all brightly colored, and coupons, 2 for $8.
All kinds of coupons. All kinds of coupons. This is a very popular cereal.
It is Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I think it has the highest sugar content of any
I think you're
cereal.
right. It is
What I
super
heard
popular.
was
It's like a treat when people have it. It's like, oh, wow, this is
Right.
great.
I'm
Favorite
afraid to even
ones.
look at the.
I know.
I'm afraid.
Well, they have
Which
some-
one do we pick to compare the label to? They all look awful.
Well, we should go with the Cinnamon Toast Crunch because it is so popular.
Okay.
It is just super popular.
Well, okay. So we have
What do you
the
compare to? Oh my God. It's
churro
what's in there?
flavor, the French toast flavor, the cinnamon,
this is
the
Cinnamon
tres
Toast Crunch.
leches.
I didn't know that was Cinnamon Toast Crunch too.
Look, here's the original. I think this is the original. How do you tell? I don't
It's
know.
hard.
There's so many Cinnamon Toast Crunches. Okay, front of box. Good source of calcium. 16 grams of whole grain per serving. 12 vitamins and minerals. Oh, it must be healthy.
Must be.
It's got to be healthy.
And it's swimming in milk.
Yeah. Crispy sweetened whole wheat and rice cereal. And then, okay, let's just go straight to the ingredients, shall we? Well, okay, the number one ingredient is whole grain wheat.
All right. Well, that's good.
I expected it to be much farther down on the list.
that's
The
a good
number
thing.
2 is sugar, which was the
It's
number 2
right.
on my healthy one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And number 3 is rice flour. And then we have oil, fructose, maltodextrin, dextrose. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4 of the ingredients on this list are types of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. 1 cup is the
One
serving size.
Cup. That is
So
such a small
smaller.
amount.
And
Yeah.
then 170 calories per cup and 33 grams of sugar, of which only 3. So that ratio, 33 to 3 is 11 to 1.
Yeah.
So
which
that
is too high.
exceeds that. Yeah, it's not enough. So even though it's saying, oh, it's made with whole grains, the amount of fiber in here is much less. So that's not really a high fiber product, right? So they're trying to make it look healthy, but when you look at the actual amounts, even though the number one ingredient is whole grain wheat, because so many of the other ones are sugar and refined white rice flour, the actual amount of fiber per serving is very low.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we know it's still a junk food.
Yeah. So 16 grams of whole grain per serving doesn't really tell you. It makes it sound like, oh, it must have lots of fiber, but
Yeah,
it doesn't. When you
right.
actually look at the label, it doesn't.
And that's one of
That's
the
a
most
good one.
popular cereals
It really
in the
is.
country.
Horrible.
I think they beat out Kellogg's Frosted Flakes.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. I'm getting diabetes just standing in this aisle.
Yeah, for real.
All right. I just want to look at I don't even want to, I hate touching poultry packages. I feel like I'm getting salmonella.
I
all over
know.
me.
Did you
All
see
right.
this?
Boneless, skinless
I know.
chicken breast. No added hormones, 100% natural. What do we know about natural? Doesn't mean
You
anything.
don't know anything about it.
No artificial ingredients, no preservatives.
But look
And
at how
then-
big those chicken breasts are.
But it says
This could be.
no added hormones, but then it does say underneath
Water.
that's kind of meaningless because look at what it says. Federal regulations prohibit the use of hormones or steroids in poultry. So when they say no added hormones on the front of the package, they have to by law.
Right.
Like they don't even have to say that because none of these will have added hormones by law.
Yeah.
So that's just like bragging about
Everybody's like
something
that.
that's not,
Right.
it's not unique to them. And this is a 97% fat free. They're huge. First of all,
They're
these
gigantic.
are ginormous.
No.
Okay. And it does say may contain up to 3% of retained water. But here's the thing about these chicken breasts. There is something called plumping
Yes.
that they do where they actually inject it with
Yes.
salt water. And it
Yes.
may even have other, like flavors or chemicals in there. And that's actually when they studied it, as much as 30%, usually closer to 15%, but in some cases, as much as 30% of the weight of the product was just this salt water that they inject into the breast to make
Wow.
them juicier and plumper. It's not actually the meat.
Right.
So when this says 97% fat-free, like a lot of the weight here is going to be this plumped salt water.
Right.
And what I want to know is, do they have to include it on the ingredient list? Ingredients: boneless, skinless chicken breast with rib meat. They don't even mention that, but
They
they did it.
You know they did it.
So it's not required to be included on the label, although they did say that it may contain, this says up to 3%. I have a hard time believing that, but that's the front of the package.
There it is.
That's not regulated. Interesting. A serving size is 4 ounces.
What is
of this
retained
chicken.
water? I mean, we know retained is it's held within.
I don't know.
But
maybe after it's cooked and before it's cooked. I don't know. I have no idea.
Wow.
So when we talk about whole food and people will buy, okay, chicken breast, it's a whole food, right? It just says chicken. So, but you really have to be aware of the things that they do to process it.
Me again. I never want to present misinformation in my episodes. So after Mae and I finished our safari through the grocery store, I went back and looked at the regulations on poultry labels more closely. The USDA does mandate that all additives, including plumping with salt water, be added to the label. So it turns out that the chicken breasts that Mae and I were looking at were very likely not plumped. In fact, I pulled up my handy H-E-B online ordering app and looked at all of the fresh chicken breast products listed for sale. None of them listed saltwater or other additives. Now, our local H-E-B only stocks H-E-B-owned products like Central Market and Hill Country Fare. They don't stock major brands like Tyson in the fresh poultry section. They did have one other brand available that's labeled as an all-natural healthy chicken breast, and it also did not have saltwater or any other added ingredients listed on the label. So be aware of the practice of plumping so you know what you're paying for, but kudos to H-E-B for not selling plumped chicken.
Now, interestingly, I think they're not allowed to add that stuff to beef. But what you have to watch is the labels, like things like grass-fed. They can claim that it's grass-fed, which sounds like the cow is roaming around in the pasture just eating grass, but their feed only needs to contain 1% of grass to be labeled as grass-fed.
That's incredible.
But it does not necessarily mean that it's better. So you need to look for a certification by I can't remember the name of it, like the grass-fed pasture-raised
all we have to
cattle.
look for is higher prices in order to find the grass-fed.
No, because they can call it grass-fed and has 1% and then charge more for it because that's what's on the label.
Yeah.
Right. And then when we're talking about chicken, you know, things like chicken and eggs, free range, pasture raised, these can be misleading because they just have to have access to the outdoors. But if you think about those factory farming poultry things, this is, cage free. They're not in a cage, but there's tens of thousands of them in this one barn and one tiny little door that none of them can get to. Right. So they have access if they could get to it. And so then they can label it cage free or free range, but they've never set foot outside in their life. So those things are very misleading on the packages.
And when you see them on movies and documentaries and see how inhumane it is, your heart goes out.
Okay, so ground beef. There's a lot of controversy about the ingredients in ground beef. And a few years back, there was this whole thing about pink slime.
Yeah.
And it was this whole controversy. You can look it up on the internet. I'm not going to go into it. So basically, what they did a few years back after this big controversy was they managed to get pink slime renamed ground beef is what it's called.
Wow.
So you look at this like 90% lean ground beef.
And it's pink slime.
It may be this processed pink slime.
Which is what that looks like.
Yeah, it looks awful, right?
It does.
Where this one says 80% lean, 20% fat, right? Well, they're going to heat this beef byproduct to remove off the fat.
Right.
And then they treat what's left with ammonia gas.
Oh my God.
Which is poisonous. Yeah, ammonia is poisonous, but in the United States, under the FDA, ammonia is included in a group of additives that have never been tested for safety and are included under something called GRAS, generally recognized as safe.
Oh my God.
And so there's like hundreds of these that were actually never tested for safety that are allowed to be added in, without ever, and claim that they're safe under this generally recognized as safe category under the FDA.
So this is meat that's not even real meat.
Right.
It's byproduct
It's
of meat.
a byproduct, and it's treated with ammonia gas. In other countries, including Canada and Europe, it's illegal to do that. But here in the US, we can do that. So if you want really good, like ground meat, I would say go buy some beef and have the butcher grind it up. You're going to pay a lot more.
Yeah. But
you know what you're getting. But honestly, red meat, my stance on red meat, it's saturated fat. It's not healthy. It's, across the board associated with higher rates of chronic disease and death. Terrible for the planet, the environment, terrible for the cows. I would just stay away from it.
In the documentary we just watched, the man said that I think he said the United States in particular is approaching a point of gluttony.
Yeah.
When it comes
I don't know about
to
approaching.
the desire for meat, or red meat.
Wow, that was a lot of information. I hope I haven't left you feeling even more overwhelmed about the prospect of finding healthy options on your next shopping day. To make it easier, let me just break it down into a few simple rules to keep in mind when shopping. Now, this first one is the biggest one. Whenever possible, go with whole foods that you can find in nature. There's a reason a head of fresh broccoli doesn't come with a nutrition label. Spend most of your time in the produce aisle. When buying minimally processed goods like canned or frozen vegetables, get the one that says no or low sodium or no added sugar. Take a glance at the ingredient list and choose the product with the shortest list. The same goes for things like fresh poultry. There should be no added ingredients. When you do buy processed foods, ignore the front of the package entirely. Remember, it's not regulated. Keep in mind that the products that have the most health claims on the front are often the least healthy in reality. As you endeavor to search out the healthiest options for your family, break it up and tackle one category at a time. Do snacks one trip and then cereal the next. You'll end up with a list of healthier favorites to grab without having to think about it every single time you go to the store. To streamline the process when looking at the label, start with serving sizes and ask yourself if the serving suggested really represents the amount that you're likely to eat in one sitting. Remember that the serving size listed on the label has nothing to do with the amount of that food that you should actually eat to be healthy. Next, move to the ingredient list. Look at the top 3 ingredients, which will make up the majority of what you're getting. Then, glance at the number of other additives. The shorter the list, the better. After ingredients, look at the nutrition label itself. Starting with fat, look for the lowest saturated fat and trans fat per serving. In the carbohydrate section, choose the product with the highest amount of fiber and the lowest amount of added sugar. Compare the grams of fiber to the grams of total carb. If the total carb is more than 10 times the fiber amount, it's not a high fiber product, regardless of what the front of the package says. Go back and listen to episode 9 if you're not sure why fiber matters. Look for products that list whole grains in the top 3 ingredients. Last is protein, which we didn't really discuss in this episode. For now, I'll just say that here in the US, we are overly fixated on protein and usually exceed the recommended daily amount. Plant-based protein sources are healthier than animal-based sources for every health metric. I'll be doing an episode about protein in the future, so watch out for that. The final thing you should look at is calories. While I don't generally recommend counting calories, it is helpful to have an idea of what you're getting when determining how much of a given product you might want to eat at a time. If you're trying to achieve or maintain a healthy weight, you'll want to choose the product with the most nutrition and the fewest calories. The easiest way to do this is to go back to the first recommendation and load up on whole plant-based foods whenever possible. Basically, the number of calories per serving is good to know, but the amount of nutrition per calorie is even more important. Thank you for joining Mae and I on our supermarket adventure. I hope you come away from this episode empowered to choose the healthiest options available for yourself and your family. If you have a shopping hack that you'd like to share, please drop a comment on the Eat Greens with Dr. Black website. I'd love to hear from you. Now, go home, put away your groceries, and put that toddler down for a much-needed nap. Thanks for listening to this episode of Eat Your Greens with Dr. Black. Parenting is a journey that comes with many challenges, but also much joy. I hope this podcast empowers you to set your family on the path to lifelong health. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. For more helpful information about plant-based nutrition for families and children, check out the show website, www.eatgreenswithdrblack.com. And don't forget to eat your greens. Please be aware that this podcast provides general health information about nutrition and feeding of infants and children and is meant for educational purposes only. It's not intended to replace the important relationship between a parent, child, and pediatrician. If you have concerns about your child's nutrition, health, or growth, please consult your doctor.